South Africa's new government is a coalition of different parties that don't always agree. Now, the African National Congress, ANC, lost support in its recent election and had to form a coalition to stay in power. The new government faces big challenges like unemployment, poverty, and inequality. But the parties disagree on how to fix these issues and have different views on foreign policy, which could lead to conflicts and challenges in maintaining a unified government. Now joining me all the way from South Africa to speak on this is Willie Oakham. He is a national spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance. Hello, Willie. Thank you for joining us at this time. All right, Willie, if you can hear me, please can you unmute your device?
My device is unmuted. Oh, yes. I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you now. All right, so yeah. Willie, can you speak to us, first of all, on how the ANC's loss of support in the recent election influenced its decision to form a coalition government?
Yeah, well, the African National Congress, or the ANC, received a total of 40% of the votes. So they did not have a full-out majority, and therefore they had to go into some sort of a coalition or cooperation with other parties because they did not have 50%. Now, the Democratic Alliance, our party, declared ourselves available to work with the ANC so that we can form this government of national unity that is working to the benefit of all South Africans. And that is what happened. So the ANC did not, as in the past, reach a outright majority, and working together is now the new way in which we are going to have to handle politics in South Africa.
Okay. Now, as South Africa navigates, uncharted waters with with this first coalition government, what are the key challenges facing this government? Because I know that there's some challenges, especially when it comes to different parties coming together, everyone having their own different views and ideologies. What are the basic challenges?
I would like to be positive, and before I look at the challenges, look at what binds us together. And I believe that we all have this urge that South Africa must become a better place for all its people. So, sorry, there's an echo now. I can hear myself on two sides now.
Okay, we'll try to fix that. Just keep talking.
All right. So what we've got in common is that we want to work towards bettering South Africa for all its people. And if you've got that as your foundation, it is much easier to sort out the differences that we've got. If I know that the other parties that are in this government of national unity with us also has got the benefit of all South Africans at heart, it makes it easier to work with them, and it also makes it easier to work around problems that might arise. Obviously, we will not, from day one, as different parties with different manifestos, agree on everything. And I think that is one of the most important things that you must realize when you go into a government of national unity like ours. You're going to be unrealistic if you're going to think that you will now, or that any party for that matter, will now be able to just push down what they want and they will get everything that they want. That is not how a government of national unity works. It is a bit of give and take by everybody. But as long as the one question that every single decision that's made must adhere to is this decision in the best interest of all the people of South Africa? And I believe that if people work with that in mind, we will make this government of national unity a success. We are already seeing that this government of national unity is delivering to the people of South Africa, and that makes us very, very proud.
All right, Willie, you talked about different parties with different manifestos. How do these differing views, especially that on foreign policy among the coalition parties, reflect broader ideological divisions within the government? I know you are being positive about the whole coalition, but please speak to us about that.
Yeah, again, people have got, parties have got different policies when it comes to your international relations, there are different policies, even when it comes to economical relations within South Africa. We've got from the Democratic Alliance side, we want to see a pro growth economy in South Africa. We want to see an environment that is conducive for investment so that we can get in foreign investment into our country. That will help us to get our economy going, which will help us to create jobs. The moment that you create jobs, you alleviate poverty, the crime rate lessens. So that is what we from the Democratic Alliance side is concentrating on. And I believe that people are seeing that this, what we are trying to do, what we have done in the Western Cape, one of the provinces in South Africa that we've governed now for many years very successfully, that works. And that where we govern, we've governed good, and that we can now implement those principles within this government of national unity. Yeah, again, there will be differences, but we've got to firstly ask ourselves, what are we going to do to alleviate the food crisis in South Africa? There's a lot of people going hungry at night, people sleeping cold in the winter. We've got to look at those issues. And I believe that our partners in this GNU agrees with us that we've got to have that as our main focus, lifting the living standards of every South African. And I think that we are gradually succeeding in doing that.
All right, you talked about some policies that the Democratic Alliance, is focusing on. Now, let's focus on, still talking about foreign policies, talking about the BRICS now. Will the ANC's continued alignment with countries like Russia and China be a double-edged sword, risking diplomatic isolation and also impacting its relationship with Western nations?
We've got to grow our relationships with all countries. We've got to see that trade is increased where we as South Africans can benefit, whether it's from the United States, the European Union, or the BRICS countries. We've got to receive benefit out of that. Now, I'm not an expert when it comes to foreign relations, but what I know about foreign relations is that you've got to be able to speak your mind when it comes to what's going on wrongly in this world, and you've got to be able to be respected. And when we are looking at our foreign policy as a country, we know that there might be differences. But again, I bring this back to what we as a government of national unity must do. When we do have differences, there are mechanisms put in place internally within the GNU that will assist us to handle all the problems that we might have. So whether it's on the NHI, the National Health Insurance Bill that we've got, or whether it's on cadre deployment or on foreign policy, we've got these in-house measures that we must handle and that we will follow in the instance that there might be differences between us. But for us, the main focus must be on getting South Africans' living standards higher. It does not help us to talk about a lot of other things if people at home in South Africa that might watch the show does not have food to eat tonight. And that is the reality. We've got to better the lives of every South African. We've got to better the living surroundings of every South African. Every child must have the right to go to a proper school, to live in a safe environment, to get a job, to contribute to the economy, and to have self-respect. And that is what we are trying to do really for every South African. And I think if that is the common goal, we will succeed.
Okay. Now, we all know that, even when it comes to family, there are conflicting interests, when it comes to family. Now, how would you advise going forward the coalition government to manage the unmanageable? I'm talking about balancing competing interests and priorities among its member parties without sacrificing its soul.
Well, firstly, I think we must handle each other with respect. That is very important. If you get the feeling amongst the colleagues within the government of national unity, the one thing that you pick up is a feeling of collegiality. I had a month ago, a bit more than a month ago, a conversation with our Minister of Finance, Minister Godongwana, just after we had the government Lekgotla, the ministerial Lekgotla. And I spoke to him afterwards, and he said to me what he picked out of that, and he's an ANC minister, is that there's a feeling of respect, there's a feeling of collegiality, and that everybody is really going to put everything in their power into this government of national unity working. So to answer your question, we've got to show respect to each other. And uh, whether other parties might not have done well this election or whether the ANC dropped, that is not what this is about now. This is about working together, and we must just do that.
Talking about feeling of respect and also working together, does that also entail ensuring transparency and accountability in its decision-making processes, given the diverse interests of the member parties, and also to prevent any backroom deals?
Transparency is of utmost importance. We must be transparent with each other, but also with the community at large. We have, from the Democratic Alliance's side, to give you an example, said that the targets that the president is going to set for ministers for their key performance indicators must be published. The public must be made aware of that. And the results on that must also be published. Now, there are parties that does not want to do that. Our stance is that, as in a company, you've got shareholders. Shareholders are entitled to know what the directors of that company, what their targets are, and whether they achieve that. In a country, the citizens of the country are the shareholders, and the cabinet ministers are the directors. So the shareholders must know what the target is that the directors has got, or that the ministers in this instance has got. And the people of South Africa must also, there must be transparency so that they know whether those targets are being achieved. And transparency is important not only on the way that you are measured, but also, again, transparency and respect, I think, walks hand in hand with each other. And there must be transparency within the government of national unity. The president, as the head of government, must obviously trust his ministers. We've got 6 Democratic Alliance ministers, 6 deputy ministers. There are ministers from other parties, and there must be trust. I can't have somebody working for me if there's no trust, and I can also not work for somebody if I do not trust him. So there must be openness and trust, but it comes from both sides, and it must be respected.
We're talking about still on that chain of thought, about shareholders in companies and also cabinet ministers from different parties. I know you did talk a bit about, how you intend to tackle unemployment and poverty and all that. But if you can expatiate more, talking about the cabinet ministers, in addressing the crippling issues of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, what role will each party play in these efforts?
Well, again, each party now forms part of a unity government. So it's the role that government must play as an executive. And then obviously parties have got their own manifestos, and each party still stays an individual party, which will contest future elections as individual parties. But as a government of national unity, this government does have now got to deliver. We've got to deliver for the people of South Africa. I spoke about the economical policies that we want to institute. Another very important thing is that corruption must be stopped. We had the Zondo report. It was a commission of inquiry led by our now retired Chief Justice, Justice Raymond Zondo, with regards to state capture and the amount of corruption that was crippling South Africa. We've got to do, as a government, united, what we can to curb and to cancel out corruption, because that is literally taking money away from the people, away from service delivery, away from good schools, away from good hospitals, and it fattened the pockets of politicians, and that cannot be allowed. So you've got to look at this holistically. You've got to stop corruption. You've got to appoint people that are fit for purpose. It does not help you to appoint somebody due to cadre deployment because he's a card-carrying member of a certain party. You've got to appoint people into positions that really know how to execute the task that he is being appointed for. And when you've got that, when you've got people in positions that they know how to execute, it will be more difficult for people that in that specific department to try and institute corruption there, because the person that's on top of that department knows exactly what's going on. And we need to do that. We need to get a mind change of all civil servants in South Africa. Not all of them are not doing their work. There's a lot of people in our civil society and civil servants that are really doing a magnificent job. But there are people that need to be persuaded to get into this mindset as a civil servant, that they are exactly what the word says, and that is servants. They must realize that they are there to serve the people. If we can transform our people working in government to have that mentality, and if you can curb corruption, if you can get investments into the country, it will all play a part in building up South Africa.
That's a very important phrase for our leaders to know, that they're servants of the people. Now, just before we hear your final thoughts, would you also like to share with us, what are some of the make or break factors that will determine the success or failure of the coalition government, and how will its legacy impact South Africa's future direction and national identity?
Well, for us, we must concentrate on the make factors. We cannot let this government of national unity fail. It will be to the detriment of each South African. So we must work hard to ensure that it works. We are not going to shout every problem from the rooftop. We will try to sort it out with each other. As I said before, there are measures in place that will help us to handle conflict should there be. But South Africa cannot afford for this government of national unity not to work. And from the Democratic Alliance side, we have in the past, and again, we urge everybody that's part of this government of national unity to be here for the right reasons. We believe that they are, to work hard, committed, to really have the best interest of people at heart, and to realize that we are here as elected servants. Politicians aren't just leaders. You cannot be a leader if you are not willing to serve. If you just want to lead, you will not be successful. If everybody in this government of national unity realizes that we are here to serve the people and to have the best interest of the people at heart, I'm 100% sure that this government of national unity will be successful.
We all have that hope as well. But thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us on this. Willie Oakham, national spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance in South Africa.
Thank you for having me.
Well